Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a huge thank you to the Delta Management School for inviting me to share with you today the business perspective of the new age of ESG reporting. The topics of climate change, green transition, ESG reporting have been powerfully gathering momentum over the last few years in particular. In the post-COVID pandemic world, when we have once again been able to focus more on the future horizons rather than everyday existence and immediate crisis management. I bring to you the topic of ESG reporting challenges and issues from a purely practical business perspective, based on my personal experiences of the last few years in preparing to meet the requirements of the new EU-level reporting in a relatively complex, large organization at a time when the regulation itself is still hot off the press and guidance around it evolving at the same time as the race to prepare for the reporting is already on. For those of you not very familiar with Tallink Group, but how Peter already said, we are one of the largest ferry companies operating here in the northern part of the Baltic Sea region, made up of a network of 46 different subsidiaries, with operations ranging from maritime passenger and cargo transportation, onshore hotel accommodation provision, restaurants, onboard, onshore, and online retail, and so much more. Although certainly not alone, Tallink Group is one of around only 10 companies in Estonia currently preparing itself for its first ESG report that will have to be incorporated into the company's financial annual report and meet the requirements of the EU's relatively new Corporate Social Reporting Directive and the European Sustainability Reporting Standards. Now, despite the fact that the company has been incorporating different sustainability data into its annual reports already since the turn of the century, for example, employee statistics, different environmental incidents, and so on and so forth, which is for over 20 years, the new reporting has certainly introduced fresh challenges for us and demands on our business. Like many other companies, we have run the course with different global reporting, voluntary agreements, frameworks, and disclosure norms, ranging from the UN's SDGs to GRI, to basing our plans and activities on, at the time, materiality assessments, and developing sustainability strategies that run through the whole organization and all operations. All this effort has led to a hugely encouraging cultural change in the organization, where sustainability is regularly discussed at the board table, and sustainability considerations are at the core of the organization's decision-making. We were nicely moving along in the right direction in ESG. Granted, we were perhaps not always the fastest, and we were at times criticized for perhaps not being ambitious enough with our goals. But we were moving in the right direction and doing practical, tangible things with immediate impact. Until suddenly, the data deluge began to overtake the practical sustainability work, and the focus shifted in the business, for instance, from saving perfectly good office or vessel furniture, from ending up in landfill, and organizing it to be distributed, for example, to organizations that needed it all across Estonia, or organizing maritime safety training for children from disadvantaged backgrounds, to filling in Excel spreadsheets with data to meet the requirements of the new standard. Wading through the hundreds of pages of directives and standards and pulling together hundreds of lines of ESG data, I have found myself more and more asking the question, and also answering a similar question from my colleagues: will all this extra data that we are now collecting and reporting on actually translate into real impact? I was lucky enough to begin my journey into sustainability almost a decade and a half ago in a UK company whose central premise was doing business sustainably and with the ultimate goal of giving back to the world around us. Long before it was actually popular and long before ESG indices and standards started gathering momentum globally. Since then, I have witnessed the field morph from CSR to a wider sustainability to what we now call ESG, an evolution that in itself is natural as the field continues to mature and grow in line with global environmental, social, and governance issues needing addressing and the goals set to address them. In Tallink Group as well, like I said, the first elements of ESG data were reported already as early as the turn of the century, followed by a gradual incorporation of sustainability strategies into operations, and ESG today running through all our operations and levels of the organization. In the last 2 decades, I have also witnessed the evolution of the related reporting, standardization, and expectations for companies at a time of increasing global realization that climate change and social imbalance are something we need to tackle, all of us together, with greater speed than perhaps we thought even a decade ago. As the global ESG indices, initiatives, agreements, pacts, targets have mushroomed over the last decade in particular, it is no surprise that there has also been corresponding exponential growth in the data and advisory market related to ESG. With approximately 50,000 companies in the EU, another 10,000 worldwide, and a maximum of, let's count it, about 66 million data points to be added to the market in the next 2 to 3 years as a result of the adoption of CSRD alone, it is no surprise there is such growth. The sheer volume of advisories and consultancies now cropping up, not just daily, but actually hourly, in my inbox, my news, my social feeds, is mind-boggling. It feels, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit, that we are in the midst of an ESG consultancy and advisory bonanza. And feeding it is the current regulatory landscape, which vows no additional administrative burden on businesses, yet contributes directly to the rapid growth of the ESG data management and advisory market, with, for example, also the Green Claims Directive, the CSDDD, and no doubt also already some new regulation looming on the horizon once the CSRD is fully implemented. Having worked with the CSRD now for approximately 2 years, preparing our business for the first report meeting its requirements, we have spent the best part of these 2 years dissecting the directive and its related standard with a host of consultants and sustainability experts, carrying out double materiality assessment, also gap analysis of data compared to topical standard requirements, to recalculating existing data into formats that would meet their standards requirements, to most recently also spending quite a lot of time in interviews with auditors explaining our approach to solving the ESRS puzzle that was handed to us in 2022. Any business currently in the process of preparing for CSRD reporting in 2025 will understand what I mean when I say it is challenging. When CSRD was first debated, I felt glad that together we were developing something that would render the myriad existing indices and standards perhaps obsolete, create something clear and simple that all businesses could follow, and we can take the guesswork out of ESG data and reports, and finally be able to compare companies' ESG data and reports easily. But alas, what we have at the moment, I feel, is a standard that requires a law degree or decades in the halls of Brussels to interpret, and a host of advisors and platforms and significantly larger in-house teams to meet the requirements. So where lies the complexity? Some of the greatest challenges for the first wave of organizations reporting in line with CSRD are probably related to the newness of it all. Having to prepare for something that is currently still in development itself is never easy. And at first, there is always also a lack of available tools to help you do the job. And then suddenly, you have the other end of the extreme and a new problem with a deluge of different tools to choose from. Adding to the challenges right now are also the noise factor arising from all the different advisories and data platform providers and university students and government bodies all either trying to sell you a service, platform, or ask you, how well are you getting on with the preparations for the CSRD reporting? All at the same time as you are trying to keep focus and actually prepare for the reporting. And then the further challenge arises from the so-called, what I call the audit experiment, as we, ESG practitioners in businesses and the ESG auditors, who are quite new into the field, have to learn to work together for the first time in an area with new rules, but also at the same time, quite a significant level of ambiguity, subjectivity, and uncertainties. It all adds to the current perfect storm, in my view. There are, of course, benefits to CSRD, as it is an attempt to make ESG progress, achievements, and reports comparable. But my opinion is that, at least initially, it may not be achieved. Why? Firstly, the standard is too overwhelming and complex to understand and interpret. Read the standard and you will probably understand yourself. A small and medium-sized business without a sustainability team in-house to manage the process will probably struggle to implement it without external assistance. I believe that if you want results and buy-in from the word go, simplicity should be key. Secondly, the scope is too wide. Yes, you can reduce the scope of your report by conducting the double materiality analysis and eliminating topical standards that are proven to be immaterial for your business. But the reality we are seeing at the moment is that auditors challenge and question your decisions of reducing the scope, pushing for more data rather than good quality initial data in key areas to be reported. Not everything can be achieved overnight. All the data cannot be collected with good quality immediately, and at the same time as processes are still actually being put in place, clarified, and improved. It feels a little bit like we are trying to put the cart before the horse, and as a result, nobody is really going anywhere. And thirdly, the standard is way too specific in some areas and unnecessarily vague in others. Some requirements mean companies have to change the format of existing data, and others leave methodologies for calculations wide open. Our experience shows that when methodologies are left open, comparability is zero. I bring a case in point as an example. The MRV regulation with its TETIS database, as a European Commission database, where supposedly you are able to compare the emissions of vessels operating to and from European Union ports, but in reality, the results are not so easily comparable. We are comparing apples and pears, as the methodology for calculating the said emissions is for each company to choose for themselves. In situations like these, I believe it's only natural to want to choose the results and methodologies that actually show your company in the best possible light, as customers will make decisions on engaging with your company based on these results. So, should we not have clearer reporting standards? No, that is also not the answer. I absolutely commend the attempt to standardize ESG reporting, but we must do it in a way that doesn't add to the administrative burden, in a way that is clear and is easily and commonly understood, with not only data requirements, but with also clear methodologies, so actual comparability can be achieved, and therefore also real impact and purpose. Because ultimately, I believe it's not our goal to grow and feed the ESG data and advisory market or economy, but to achieve real, tangible, simply measurable environmental, social, and governance goals that enable us to develop our global economies sustainably and in a balanced way. Right now, looking at my slide as well, it does not look like the growth in ESG data and the data market is actually leading to desired results and impact. I'll leave you to have a think about that. So what should ESG reporting aim for? I believe it is simplicity, clear methodologies, meaningful metrics that are useful and actually have a purpose. Companies should not be pushed to report on as much as possible and as fast as possible, but should be allowed and encouraged to have focus, to report with good quality data, and perhaps at first, less is more, at least from the impact point of view. More often than not, an abundance of data gives us the false sense of progress and achievements, and there is a real threat of greenwashing. So while data collection has exploded, real impact requires a focus on relevant, high-quality data. We should gather meaningful data, which is precise, relevant, and actionable, and this will have greater potential for impact. Current practices often prioritize data volume due to regulatory pressures, which can dilute focus and reduce actionable insights. It's not the amount of data we have, but how we use it that will drive change. To achieve real impact, ESG reporting should shift from collecting more data to collecting better, purpose-driven data that is clear, actionable, and meaningful. So, to answer the question that I posed in my title, is more data going to lead to real impact? My answer is probably no. The future of ESG shouldn't be built on more data, but on meaningful data that drives measurable change. Thank you.